U.S. military is not ready for a major war with China, let alone a war against China and against Russia, North Korea, or Iran. That's bad, very bad. China's anti-ship ballistic missiles are a powerful threat that could keep American carriers from where they are needed in the East China and South China Seas. The Heritage Foundation outlines this troubling incompetence in the annual U.S. Military Strength Index, released October 18. Heritage is right to emphasize our need for a more powerful Space Force, but while acknowledging the growing threat from Chinese and Russian hypersonic missiles, we disagree with Heritage's call for much greater spending on missile defense against them. Considering Russia's war in Ukraine and the nuclear threat associated with President Vladimir Putin, North Korea's increasing ballistic missile tests, Iran's nuclear threshold, and the growing risk of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, some analysts expect that between 2024 and 2027 the disposition of the American military is of immediate concern. We strongly disagree with Heritage that the F-35 stealth fighter is better suited than the F-15X for future battles with China. If America had relied on the F-35, it would have lost that battle. In the Pacific, U.S. forces would face heavy numerical and geographic losses. The F-35 can track more enemy aircraft but has fewer guns, so it can shoot fewer of them, which doesn't help. The aircraft has a poor development record, and the U.S. is unlikely to build enough F-35s to fight on the scale needed against a numerically superior Chinese military. Even if such a huge expense were practical, the F-35 was woefully ineffective both for its price and for such a war. The expected lifespan and even non-stealth weapon capacity is half that of the F-15EX. Heritage rightly notes that the Navy's fleet is too small, its warships are too heavily deployed, and its personnel are poorly trained. This increases maintenance costs and delays repairs while impairing readiness. More shipyards and shipyard repairs are needed and closer to a prospective fight, like in Guam or Okinawa. Fleet must diversify procurement, and support needs to shift away from supporting outdated platforms, such as aircraft carriers, and towards weapons more suitable for fighting China, such as manned and unmanned attack submarines. Navy must also dramatically reduce fleet deployments in Europe, obliging American allies to take on greater responsibility for joint defense of NATO. Europe had a navy well equipped with ships and crews but had no desire to defend itself. The United States must no longer tolerate Europe's unconvincing preferences because America is doing an expensive and painstaking job of defending the continent's deterrence and defense. Instead, the Biden administration continues to encourage this European inaction by sending more of America's finest warships and fighter jets to Europe. Washington's priority for the U.S. Navy should be China. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's meeting with Xi Jinping in Beijing is a reminder that European powers like Germany and France will do little to help the U.S. against China. Therefore, it was necessary to force them to take more responsibility for their own defense. Instead, missile defense should focus on the threat posed by countries like North Korea and Iran, which have fewer warheads and can thus be more easily deterred. This would save money that could be better spent on increasing our own nuclear deterrent force and building up a larger stockpile of conventional munitions such as long-range anti-ship missiles, the stuff needed to confront China and Russia. Other concerns raised by Heritage are the critical shortage of pilots in the Air Force and the wholly inadequate number of flight hours allowed for crews from training. Active-duty fighter pilots are flying less than 7 hours a month on average in 2021. This means pilots don't reach the 200 hours they need each year. Perhaps the bigger problem is that the Air Force fleet is too old. More planes had to be built and delivered faster than at present. Heritage's main conclusion is, however, sound and worrying. The U.S. military is underfunded, ill-equipped, and unprepared to fight and win the war against China. The Pentagon needs more money and bolder leadership. The Department of Defense, President Joe Biden, and Congress need a much greater sense of urgency. If they don't get it, and quickly, the U.S. may soon lose the war that determines the future of freedom and prosperity in the 21st century.